to tonight's webinar, the 12 days of polyvagal. I thought you were going to wear a Christmas jumper, Deb.
You know, I looked for my reindeer antlers and I couldn't find them. So,
So my name is Liam. I'm the director of PCPSI, and a big welcome, Deb. And I'm really grateful that you've joined us again tonight at such short notice.
Who could pass up the 12 days of polyvagal?
we should have invited Steve on,
right,
as a special guest.
Yes.
So before we start, Deb, I'll just go the usual, just a few things I need to call out. So just any technical issues, the easiest thing to do is to log off and log back on using the link provided. If the issues persist, we have a very capable lady by the name of Mary on the other side. So please give Mary an email, and Mary's email is mary@pcpsi.ie. And what we'd encourage from the start is that people just send in questions. I know you love as many questions as possible, Deb. Even though we don't always get a chance.
We don't get to them, yeah.
Yeah, but just please send in questions using the Q&A function at the end. And for those that are interested, there's a CPD cert available to purchase for this webinar if you're interested in getting CPD points. Robert, you might put the link up, please, to that CPD cert. And I just want to say the goal of tonight's webinar is just to give everybody a snippet of what we're going to be doing next year in the year-long training, a year of polyvagal. And as well as that tonight, we really, one of the things that PCPSI have been very appreciative of is Deb. And Deb, you've been really very generous in giving us lots of knowledge about the polyvagal theory and what it looks like in therapy. So we really want to expand our platform of polyvagal knowledge tonight. So that's really a big goal. So I'd be kind of, before we start, Deb, I'd be interested to hear what you hope people will achieve, if they do the training next year. Yeah. For me, at the moment, I think Robert was just telling us before we came on air that we have people signed up for about 15 different countries, which is just super cool.
Yes.
And one of the things that I really wanted, the big goals for me in the year, is to create a community of learners with a shared vision. I remember the time we had the conversation, and I said, I came up with this idea and I thought it was a bit off the wall. And I said to you, Deb, I have an idea, but it's a bit off the wall and I don't know what you think. And I had two other ideas. And you said to me, give me the off the wall idea first. And it was great because we never got to the other two ideas.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We don't need the other ones. This so pulled at my heart, this creating a community of learners, a global community of polyvagal learners, and for a year. So, part of it is my real appreciation of people making a commitment to a year of learning together, which really allows us to deepen in and become, a true, rich, connected community. And I just love that thought. And, every month coming with a new little piece of the theory to dive into, and then have a month to practice and explore and see how that piece of learning comes to life in our daily world. I think just really intrigued me. I thought, no, this is it. I don't need to hear anymore, Liam. Don't tell me anymore. Let's go with the off the wall idea. So, yeah. And with 15 countries represented already, it just feels like the time is right for this. People are hungry for community and are hungry for understanding how we come into community and connect safely through the lens of our nervous system. You know, that really is the way, because our brains are not going to get us there, right?
Absolutely.
It's our embodied experience that is going to then connect with our brain to help us get to wherever 2021 is going to take us. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So am I, Deb. Okay, so Robert, what you might do, Robert, you might put up the link to the training next year for anybody that's interested, and you can book online. So what I'd like to start with, Deb, is and I was really kind of fascinated when I saw this. So we're going to start in January with autonomic intentions. So I tell you why I was fascinated first. I do a lot of work with Stephen Terrell and Transforming Touch, and a big idea and a big way of working in the touch world is the power of intention. And then at the same time, I remembered from my psychotherapy training that positive intention is always undermined by by unconscious motivation. So maybe to start, you could just tell us what you mean by autonomic intentions.
Yeah. You know, and I love it in January, because in January we begin anew, right? We've had an ending and we have a beginning as the year begins. It's one of my favorite moments, is when something new is ready to emerge. And so, you know, we make resolutions, right? And how often do our resolutions how often do we keep them, right? And what I've come to discover is that most of the time, or oftentimes, we make a resolution with our brain, right? Our brain comes up with an idea and we write the intention, and it's our brain that's running the show. And our nervous system is often not in agreement with that, right? So if instead we go to the nervous system and think, what is the shape of my nervous system that I would like to support this coming year, right? And then how might I bring that alive? It's a different way of setting an intention. So perhaps one of my autonomic intentions is to be less quick to go to my dorsal home away from home, right? So that might be the autonomic intention that underlies the what I'm going to write with my brain. I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to write a statement that's going to bring that to life. And there's a lot of research on goal setting and follow through. And so we are going to use that research and apply it to our nervous system. So the implementation intentions and the if-then statements and all the ways that the world is trying to support us in writing goals and following through, we're going to then translate that to look through the lens of the nervous system first, you know. So, and if we just think about the nervous system for a moment, when I write an intention, it has to pique the interest of my nervous system, right? If it's too subtle, my nervous system doesn't get interested in it and is not going to pay attention. But if it's too grand, too big, it's going to overwhelm my nervous system, and I'm not going to have that support following through. So we're looking for just the right way of writing that intention so that my nervous system says, oh, I want to do that. I want to help this being follow through with that. So yeah, I love autonomic intentions. You know me, I put autonomic in front of everything. Autonomic intentions, we create autonomic intimacy. Everything is driven by our embodied system first, and then our brain can help with that, rather than starting with the brain and forgetting that the nervous system is the platform, right? The state creates the story. So if I don't write the intention from the state that will support it, I will not be able to be successful with it.
So it's a real kind of, January is a real start of an autonomic adventure.
Yep. And the intentions we write in that month, we're going to then follow through for the year and see, it kind of sets us up for where are we going and what are our personal intentions for this journey we're going on together. Yes.
Brilliant. And then we very organically go to February, which is the month of Valentine's and the month of our heart.
Yes.
And I think what you're going to look at in depth in February is ventral vagal regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really liked when I was reading some of the material that you sent over is it really, one of the phrases that came to me is the organic intelligence of ventral. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like a homing pigeon, that we have the organic intelligence to find our way home. Yes. To ventral. Yes. So maybe say a bit about that, Deb.
Sure. Yeah, and I do think February is the month for ventral, as well as whenever we start on a journey, we want to make sure that we're anchored in ventral, because you know, as I tell my clients, and we'll tell this group who sign up, we're going on an adventure, and we're not sure where it's going to take us, but we're taking ventral with us, so it's going to be safe enough to explore. The same is true in therapy. We don't know where we're going to go with our clients in any session, but as long as we take enough ventral with us, it's safe to explore. It's safe to go where their nervous system tells us, here's where I want to go. So we're going to find a way to really nourish our home in ventral. What I say is, you know, the nervous system knows the way home. It inherently knows how to come to ventral and come to homeostasis. You know, oftentimes those pathways have been covered up by our traumatic past. Mm. And it's not that we have to create new pathways. We're simply uncovering the biological pathway that already exists there. And then we're going to travel that pathway over and over so that we resource the capacity to again, travel that pathway home. You know, and I like to think of ventral as home. I call it our home, and you can find your way home. I like your homing pigeon. Interesting to think. My homing pigeon is getting me home to ventral. Then we have a home away from home, which is one of the two survival states that we most often end up in, either sympathetic or dorsal. And I think what I've discovered and what I've been working with in a new book that I'm just writing is that we need to know our home, and we need to know how we experience home away from home, because the nervous system always needs something to compare and contrast to. So it's lovely to know my ventral home, but I also have to know, what does it feel like to be in my dorsal home away from home, so that I can recognize, where am I in this moment? And that's a true embodied experience of being home and in my home away from home. The other thing I would mention, which I think is nice for February and Valentine's, is I think our souls also have a home. And I think, you know, my embodied system, I have a home. I have a home away from home, but my soul has a home as well. And I know for me, my soul home is near the sea. And when I am away from the sea for too long, I feel that urgency to find water, to be there. And then that sense when I arrive by the sea, that sense of, oh, it's a bigger home than just this body home. It's more of a you know, existential soul home. So we're going to explore all that in February and set the tone, knowing that as we move through the other months, we have this home in ventral that we know how to get to, and we can anchor there.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And that brings us again into March then, and in March we're going to go in depth into just what you've mentioned, the sympathetic and dorsal systems, which you call the adaptive survival responses.
Yeah.
So could you maybe talk a little bit, Deb, about the healthy and survival functions of both?
Absolutely. And that's great, because we want to remember that sympathetic and dorsal also have healthy everyday roles and responsibilities in our nervous system, right? And to think about ventral again for just a moment, without ventral being, you know, in charge, overseeing the system, sympathetic and dorsal can't do those everyday roles, right? But if ventral's there, then sympathetic helps regulate our heart rate and our blood pressure and our breath cycles, and brings us the ability to do this, to move, to be passionate, to do all of this under the management of ventral. So it's just a lovely, energizing experience of sympathetic, right? And dorsal, when it's under the management of ventral, its everyday responsibility is to nourish us through bringing nutrients through our digestive system. So you can see how important these two systems are. It's only when they're in relationship with ventral that we experience that well-being. So that's the everyday system, the three in relationship. It's when they fall out of relationship, right, that we move into the survival states instead. And, you know, we know sympathetic pretty much through the fight and flight metaphor, right? You know, it's a system of chaotic, disorganized, overwhelming energy when it moves into survival. And I do love that you said adaptive survival, because we always want to put the word adaptive in front of survival state, because the nervous system has making that change in response to cues of danger that it feels coming at it. So it's adaptive in the nervous system's point of view. So, you know, sympathetic, that fight and flight that can be, you know, rage and anger and out of control, and can be anxiety and panic and the need to run, right? That's sympathetic. And then dorsal, the other adaptive survival state, is that, you know, no energy, collapse, shut down, disappear. You know, in its most extreme form is dissociation, but in its, you know, nuanced flavor, it's going through the motions without really having the energy to care, or without really being here doing it, right? So those, and again, it's adaptive survival. When all else fails, the nervous system will take us to dorsal, right? The first stop in survival is some form of fight and flight, and the second and last stop on that highway is dorsal collapse.
Brilliant. And I was reading your fantastic book, The Polyvagal Theory and Therapy, Engaging the Rhythm of Regulation. Actually, there's a few lads that I work with, and they're going to do the air as well. So we've kind of created a bit of a book club,
I love it.
Which is super cool. And I was reading the first few chapters again, and this is a bit of a technical question now, so forgive me that. Like you mentioned in relation to the dorsal system, shutdown and collapse. Physiologically, what did it look like physiologically, and how are they different?
Shut down or collapse, or
do you look at them as different, or do you look at them as the same thing?
No, I think physiologically it pretty much is the same. The body goes into some form of conservation mode. Our heart rate slows, our breath changes, the blood flow to the brain and the oxygenation of blood to the brain changes, which makes our thinking, we get foggy, fuzzy, we go numb, we can shut down or collapse. All of these are in the same, we're just putting different language because we have a bit of a different experience around it. But physiologically, it is that conservation mode that the body enters into, and then the neurochemicals and everything change around that. And again, remember, it does that because dorsal is now acting all on its own. It's the soul. It's like the soul survivor in the system, right? Ventral and sympathetic have gone away, and dorsal is the only system left that can keep us alive.
Okay, thanks, Deb. So then in April, and I forgot to say March is my birthday.
Well, then we will explore your survival states on your birthday month.
It's the 1st of March, so if anybody wants to send me a card, please do.
1st of March, and mine, as we enter April, mine is the 1st of April, so here we go.
Oh, yours is the 1st of April, wow.
Yeah, so what are we doing in April? Where do we go?
So what we're doing in April is flavors of and pathways between different states. So maybe tell us a bit about autonomic hierarchy, because I know that's going to be part of it.
Yeah, and we're gonna explore both the regulated pathways, which are the pathways that take us from ventral to sympathetic to dorsal and back again, when we're feeling that sense of balance and homeostasis, because we want to get to know those landscapes as well. Those are important. And we're going to explore the dysregulated pathways, following the hierarchy. The hierarchy simply is, Steve Porges's brilliant theory lets us know that we move between these states in a certain order. right? That our, inherent longing is to be in ventral. And so if we start in ventral, and if we feel challenged by the world or by a person or even by our internal world, if the challenge feels too much, we then go to sympathetic. That's the next stop on the hierarchy. And if that resolves the problem, if we manage from there, we come back to ventral. And we do that many, many times a day. The ventral sympathetic ventral pathway is an easy pathway for humans to follow, right? It's we're meant to do that. It's easy. It's when sympathetic doesn't solve the problem and the nervous system feels still endangered that we then are taken to dorsal. And we are not meant to be in dorsal. Dorsal is a sort of a dangerous place for we humans, because we do go to conservation mode, and we are so far away from any form of help when we're there. We feel lost, alone, abandoned in that place, right? And so, the pathway back from dorsal, in order to get to ventral, we have to go through a bit of that mobilizing energy of sympathetic. And when I say that, people go, oh, we have to go through fight and flight. I said, no, we have to have a little bit of sympathetic mobilizing energy, but we don't want it to be chaotic, disorganized fight and flight. So one of the things we explore in April is, how do we bring just a bit of mobilization, safe amount of mobilization, so that we can move from dorsal to sympathetic back to ventral again, and travel that pathway. So we're going to explore the landscapes and explore the pathway between the states. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Deb. And then in May, we go on to autonomic states that underlie powerful emotions. And I was thinking maybe to mix it up a bit here, is that we got actually an very interesting question in. Beautiful. So we could just put the question in now, and I just want to say the question is from a good friend of mine by the name of Richard. Nice. I just want to say hello to Richard, and I just want to say as well that Richard is retiring from his job soon, and I've no doubt that he'll be very sadly missed, because he does great work in and has done great work for a number of years in an institution that that need people like Richard. So
beautiful.
Yeah, so Richard's going to be really kind of missed there.
Yeah.
So hello, Richard. And the question is, intrigued by Deb's point that all emotions can appear in each of the three states, could she illustrate this with, say, anger or sadness as to what this might look like?
Sure. Yeah. So let's think about sadness for the moment, because, well, either one, we could take both, because they seem to be very present in our world nowadays, right? Lots of sadness, lots of grief and loss, also lots of anger. But let's take sadness. Somehow it appeals to my system at the moment. And from ventral, I can really be with my sadness and be informed by it. And I can even move into this deep heart ache, but I do it from a place where I am present with it, and I am with it, and I can listen to it and learn from it. That's a ventral experience of sadness. And sadness is something that lives in ventral as well. We don't want to deny our sadness. It makes us, it adds to the richness of our life. If I travel to sympathetic, sadness then becomes this uncontrollable experience where I am stuck in a loop. I'm just stuck in this cycle of tears or crying or bitterness or any of those things that I can't learn from. I feel as though I'm at the mercy of. That's an experience of sympathetic, being at the mercy of forces that you have no control over. So sadness there is a deeply experienced emotion, but I never can move away from it or learn from it. I can't listen to it. And then in dorsal, sadness is that deep, unremitting grief that takes me in and pulls me to a place where, again, I am stuck. I am lost. I'm alone, and I can't move out of that place of grief, right? And we know that with some of our clients. We know they move into that, deep, unresolved, unremitting grief, right? That, grief is important. We need to feel grief, to be with grief. But when we go to dorsal and grief takes over, then we can't find our way out. We are lost in the place of grief. If you're a grief counselor or someone who works with grief, you're going to go meet your client in that place of dorsal despair, in that unremitting grief, and you're going to bring your ventral to be with them so that they can begin to have a taste of, oh, when ventral's around, I can do something with that grief. So in sympathetic, you're at the mercy of, you're just being tossed and turned in that huge sadness, right? And in dorsal, in that grief, you are lost and can't find the way anywhere. So it's only from ventral that we can truly feel the heartache and be informed by it. Yeah.
Okay. And would you say, Deb, that in dorsal that people are very disconnected from their grief?
Yeah, they're either very disconnected or they are totally consumed by it.
Okay.
So that there's not anything else, that nothing can penetrate. It's like a shell of grief that surrounds them and nothing can get in. Right. That's often what I feel with even people around me, to say nothing of clients, that it's like this impenetrable shell that, yes, they are isolated, lost, and abandoned, but they're within this impenetrable shell of grief, and so they know the grief, but they're consumed by it. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So we go on to June, and in June, we're going to look at many things in June, but one of the big topics in June is going to be regulating resources. And again, maybe just to mix it up a little bit now, so we're not making it too theoretical. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Deb.
But
would you be open to doing a practice that resources the state or ventral safely?
Sure.
An example of that, and a little kind of experiential piece that everybody on the call can do.
Yeah, the one I always go to, and the one that I find people, I get emails from people who listen, because I do this one a lot on webinars, is ventral vagal anchors, because anchors are those things we can hold on to, right? My new book that I've just finished for Sounds True actually brings this to life. The title of the book is Anchored, because I use that all the time. I think, we're anchored in ventral. We find our ventral anchors. So yes, let's find some anchors. You willing to find some anchors with me?
Absolutely.
All right. So, and what I do are the who, what, where, when of a ventral anchor. And a ventral anchor is a small something, a small who, what, where, or when that you simply connect to in order to have a micro moment of ventral. Because in this day and age we're living in right now, a long extended practice is probably unrealistic, right? But a small moment, and what the research shows us is that these micro moments add up and begin to change the set point in your nervous system. So that's why micro moments are so important. So if we think about a who is a person in your life who you have been in connection with, nervous system to nervous system, who brings you that sense of welcome and acceptance. And when you're with them, you feel safe and regulated.
Yeah, it comes to me straight away. It's a lady that I do some of the transforming touch work with.
Beautiful.
I can see her face straight away.
Beautiful. So she's a who for you, right? And because nowadays we can't be with our who's in ways we used to be able to be, but you just said, as you bring her face alive, you're right there with her, because your nervous system has already wired in the experience of being with her the living, breathing nervous systems have been together, and that experience is stored in your autonomic memory. So this who brings it alive. So that's brilliant. I love it. And for people, on the call who haven't found a person who's a who, pets are often a who, right? And I found that a lot when I was working with, my more complex trauma survivors. That a pet would be their who. So let's do a what. What is a simple little thing, just a 20 or 30-second thing that you do that reminds your nervous system, oh yes, there's a micro moment of ventral. What's something you do?
One of the things I do, I have an image of the times that we do work together, and part of the work is when I meet her face to face is she'll put her hand under my right kidney adrenal.
Yeah, lovely, beautiful.
The touch of that is really kind of nice.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. So we're using the same who for a what, which is lovely. And I want people on the line on the webinar to know you don't have to connect these. Liam has a beautiful who and what who go together. And I love that kidney adrenal spot, because that spot, the research tells us, brings ventral in and of itself. So it's beautiful. So the what is just the memory of that. Not even the having it happen anymore, but it has happened. So you bring the memory alive.
Absolutely.
My what is usually looking out the window to see what's happening in nature, because for me, there's always something interesting happening. So that's a simple one for me, just to give people another option. So then how about a when? When are the moments that come repeatedly when you notice, oh, here's a ventral anchor, here's a ventral anchor.
Yeah. What happens? Well, what usually happens for me is I would three things. First is that my vision would get sharper. I'd have more kind of visual clarity. Then I'd notice my chest is always a big place where I'd get more space in my chest, and even at the moment now I can feel the space in my chest, and there's a heat there. And then my stomach is another place that I could actually literally feel more space in my stomach and more warmth in my stomach. So there'd be three experiences that
I love it. So you have these moments that are, yeah. So again, we've done who, what. The where and when are sort of those might be wheres for you, even because you've got these embodied wheres where you feel that. Is there a where out in the world where you feel, or in your home or somewhere where you feel a ventral welcome? Oh, here's the place where I feel safe and okay.
Certainly in my office.
My
office is place that I get that.
Like
you, nature is a big place as well. And then there's a particular place in Cork, and if you ever come here, I will bring you.
You'll take me to your where?
I'll take you to my where. It's called Gugambara.
Oh, lovely.
And every speaker that did come over to Ireland when they could come, I bring them to Gugambara, and they would really kind of love it. And when Stephen came last year, Stephen Terrell, loved it so much. If you go onto his website now, you just see all pictures of Gugambara.
Oh, I love it. So it became a where for him as well.
Yeah.
There's something magical there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And my where, usually was by the sea. And I don't know if people on our webinar tonight know that I recently relocated for a bit to be close to the family in this time of COVID. So I'm no longer near the sea, and I can feel some of that. I can feel that, oh, I'm not near the sea, but I have the stars still. And so under the stars is a place, a where for me, and the stars are still here. So, people can find a where. I had a colleague who told me last week that her client couldn't find a where. And he went home, and the next week he returned to his session, and he said, I built a where in my house. A little corner, I turned it into a where, and now I go there. I said, that's beautiful. So just some small place where when you're there, you feel that predictable moment of ventral. So that's who, what, where, when is a moment that keeps coming around for you when you feel some ventral energy. It could be a day of the week, a time of day, an experience that you repeat.
I think for me it's kind of really important to build it into my day, and I like to do it first thing in the morning. Sleep is always interesting when you wake. And when I come to the office first thing in the morning, I usually have some time in the morning, and
you take a moment to notice. Ventral, beautiful. I'm an early morning person, as you know, many people know about me. So when I get up, I call it, before the rest of the world wakes up. That's a ventral moment for me. And if I stop and notice that and really bring attention to that, it has a very different flavor than if I simply am up in the morning enjoying, being up and having my coffee. And so when you add the explicit awareness of ventral moment, it takes on a different meaning in your system. And I think that's what we're trying to do as we resource the nervous system. There are many things that you are already doing that are ventral vagal resources, that are autonomic resources. But when we bring them into explicit awareness and create a way of connecting with them, you shape your nervous system more directly and you get more benefit from it. So that's what we're going to be doing in June, is really, creating a menu of resources so that everybody has their own menu. So we'll experiment with lots of them, and you'll figure out which ones work for me, which ones do I want to try on and play with over the next month, and then we'll see how that fits.
Yeah, because it seems to be really important to be able to savor these moments, because I think so that my system, anybody's system, can nearly build up a tolerance for ventral if we haven't experienced that much.
And savoring is this really lovely, again, based in science practice, which is lovely. I love that about it. A 20 to 30 second practice that simply lets us hold a ventral moment in active awareness, and it amplifies that experience. And in the beginning, oftentimes savoring and the amplification of it can quickly turn to what's called a dampening moment, where those thoughts come in. I don't deserve this. If I savor this, something bad will happen. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Any of those commonly held beliefs, right? So even with savoring, sometimes we savor for 10 seconds and we can't go further. And that's okay. And then the next time, maybe we savor 11 seconds, right? So we're even through a 30-second practice, we are shaping our system towards more connection and more regulation. And those are the kinds of things that I love to do, the short practices that we can weave into our day so that we don't have to, make time out of our day to be in autonomic connection, but rather it's woven into our day, because our nervous system is what is moving us moment to moment through our day. So let's weave it in and be in connection.
Okay, brilliant, Deb. So we're up as far as July, and I don't think we're going to get to the end of the year.
Not today.
Not today. Hopefully we will next year.
Yes, right.
So in July, we're going to be looking at different autonomic pathways, and maybe just to talk a little bit about neuroception. I suppose, firstly, for people that might be new to the polyvagal, what neuroception means. And then maybe say a bit about, and I know you've mentioned it briefly already, but I think it's a really important point, that neuroception precedes perception.
Yes.
And state before story.
Yeah,
so really
I know. I love that. Such a simple way to remember state before story, right? And neuroception is this beautiful word that I love. Neuro for nervous or neural, and ception for awareness. So neuroception is that word that Steve Porges created because there was no word to describe how the nervous system listens and takes in information. And the three pathways that neuroception uses are embodied, environmental, and relational. So inside, outside, between. And we're going to explore those three different pathways and then work with, there is what I call the safety danger equation. And the cues of safety that come through those inside, outside, between pathways have to outweigh the cues of danger that are coming in. And we usually have both. This is a both and. So in this moment, we have cues of safety coming in. One of the cues of safety for me is being with you, right? Your face and your, connection with me is a lovely cue of safety. And then a cue of danger is I'm looking at the clock going, we're only in July, right? So I have both going on, and this cue of safety outweighs that cue of danger for me. Even though there's one and one, it doesn't matter. The cue of safety of your connection has more weight in my system than seeing my clock and thinking we're only going to get to August or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? So that's what we're going to play with. And how do we rebalance that equation moment to moment? Because unless the cues of safety outweigh the cues of danger, our neuroception is going to activate one of those survival responses. So neuroception is what starts this whole process. Neuroception of danger is then going to bring sympathetic or dorsal state alive. And then the story that comes out of that is going to be either one of an unsafe world and unsafe people, or I'm lost alone and nobody knows I'm here, right? Some flavor of that. So neuroception is a biological process that we have no control over, right? But we can bring perception to that process. And once we bring perception, we can begin to work with it. So again, we're inviting the brain to join us in being with the nervous system, right? So that's that brain-body connection that is so important. And then the third thing we add is discernment, right? So just we bring perception to neuroception, but then we bring discernment, by asking, is this level of response needed in this moment? Or is this response, this move into a survival state needed in this moment? And by bringing discernment, we bring ourselves into the present moment and are able to look around and see, well, what are the actual cues of safety and danger? Because neuroception doesn't work on what concretely is here. It works on the sort of what was familiar and what comes into my nervous system and feels. So if we take, for instance, a racing heart, right? Neuroception can bring danger. I'm having in a story can then be I'm having a heart attack. Or neuroception might bring safety and it's excitement. This is fun. It's the same embodied experience, a racing heart, but neuroception is going to start the process that then either takes me into, ooh, this is fun, let's do more, or, a panic attack, I'm having a heart attack, right? Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Really looking forward to that, Deb. I'm just kind of conscious of the time.
Yeah.
So maybe if I just talk briefly about August, we're going to be looking at 4 different types of connection.
The good. So the 4 pathways. So we have 4 pathways of connection to self, to others, to the world around us, and to spirit. And we'll look at those. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Brilliant. And September then is really fascinating. So it's deep listening as an autonomic experience.
Yes. And, that experience of deep listening is some sort of a sacred gift that we can offer another when we are in a place where we have no agenda. We are not thinking about how to fix something, solve something, or even, shape something in some way. We are simply deeply embodied in our ventral and listening. And my colleague, Gary Whitehead, who's a wonderful poet, wrote a bit about this for me and wrote that, at its heart, listening is an autonomic nervous system experience. So we're going to explore that deep listening.
Wow. Great. And then October, autonomic resilience. How do we shape our system for more resilience?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, we're going to look at it through the lens of our embodied system rather than our brain, because our brain has great ideas. And what I always say is if your brain and your nervous system are in an argument, your brain is going to lose that argument every time. And we often think we build resilience by cognitive experiences, and we really build our resilience, again, shaping our system towards connection, towards anchoring in ventral. And resilience is a system that anchors in ventral, goes to sympathetic and dorsal in response to the world around it, and comes back to ventral. So it's that coming back that builds resilience. It's not staying there all the time. It's the dysregulating and coming back that builds resilience.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's like, I remember I went to a mindfulness retreat one time, and they talked about mindfulness as not being not being the capacity to be able to stay with one thing, but actually what build capacity when you were doing mindfulness, it was the moment you went away and kind of noticed that.
Exactly.
And bringing yourself back.
Exactly. And it's in the noticing.
Yeah.
Right. And then the ability to find that pathway back. So yeah, we're going to practice those ways of building resilience. Yeah.
Brilliant. And November then is fascinating. It's the autonomic underpinnings of awe, gratitude, and elevation.
I love this self-transcendent experiences. And again, believe it or not, they are mapped to nervous system states, which I think is so lovely. For me, putting the science under these magical moments does not take the magic away. It actually makes them even more magical. It takes away the mystery, which is fine with me, and leaves the magic. And so we're really going to explore, how does the nervous system support awe? And awe is a wonderfully shaping experience of the nervous system. And then gratitude, which is so necessary in our world, and elevation, which is that pay it forward experience. So 3 very different nervous system experiences that truly, I think, are going to change the world.
Magic. And then finally, December, it's safety in transitions and endings.
All right, so we will have reached the end of our year of polyvagal study together. And then the question is, how do you create ventral vagal inspired endings and transitions, right? Because we as a society are not that good about endings, or about really diving into creating endings that honor and celebrate what has happened. So we're going to play with, what does your nervous system need to have a celebratory, savoring experience of this ending and transition? And what do you want to take with you? And how do you want to take it with you so that this community continues to prosper, right?
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, Deb, great. We have about 10 or 11 minutes for some questions.
Beautiful.
So would you like me to call them out to you, or would you like?
I would love that.
Okay. So the first question is from Andrea. So hello, Andrea. And will the program also be adapted to somatic practitioners, i.e. cranial sacral therapy and somatic experiences?
It's an interesting question, and I'm not quite sure how I would answer that, because somatic experiencing, if you're an SEP or a somatic experiencing in training, you are working with the nervous system, right? Somatic experiencing is based on polyvagal theory. I am just talking about it in a different way. So if you're an SE, you will not have any trouble making that translation for yourself, I don't think. Cranial sacral is a bit different. I have cranial sacral practitioners in most of my trainings, and they make the translation from the way I am teaching to what they are doing fairly easily. I don't make that specific translation as I'm teaching, but again, the nervous system is the foundation for all of our lived experience. And so as we begin to understand it and understand how to shape it, I think if you're a cranial sacral therapist, you will not have any trouble then deciding, oh, this is how this informs this particular piece of work that I do.
Okay. Okay. And then Breed is looking for a recommendation. Any of your books that you'd recommend as kind of pre-reading for the course, Deb?
Yeah, I would recommend reading the Polyvagal Theory and Therapy, the first book. That really is the foundational book. And we are going to use some of the exercises from the second book, which is the polyvagal exercises. But I think this course really is, based on the premise that people have at least a beginning introduction to polyvagal. So read the Polyvagal Theory and Therapy. That's a great place to start. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. And then Sally. Hello, Sally. Hi, I am interested to know what you think about ADHD symptoms and polyvagal theory. I was thinking along the lines of the distractibility as dorsal vagal and the impulsivity as sympathetic, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about the distractibility as dorsal. I'll have to think about that. I usually think about ADD, ADHD as a system that can't anchor in ventral, because one of the emergent properties of sympathetic is the inability to tune out distractions and the inability to discern whether something is trivial or important. And those seem to me to be some of the symptomology of ADD, ADHD, that there's this, can't stay focused, always looking around. I don't know what to pay attention to. So for me, it's a dysregulated system. And I usually kind of work with people. I guess I'll give you my general way that I work with people is they come with a presenting problem. And I say, let's put that presenting problem over here on the table next to us. And let's work with understanding the nervous system and giving you a bit of management over your nervous system. And then we'll take that presenting problem back off the table and we'll look at it then. My belief is that many things that clients come to therapy with are reduced or even resolved when they can regulate their nervous system. And I think ADD, ADHD is one of those.
Okay, great, Ed. Thanks. And then question then from Sherry. Hello, Sherry. And it's just around, could you please speak about the structure of the annual course, what it will look like, frequency and duration of sessions?
Right, so and probably the flyer is linked to the link that Robert put in the thing, but the basic structure is we will meet is it Saturday? You can see how
one Saturday a month, yeah.
For 3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah. And you'll have an article or two that goes with each month to read. You'll get the PowerPoint handouts of whatever that I'm teaching, and we'll engage in experiential practices. And then the invitation is going to be to create something from that month that you are going to take with you into the rest of the months. And as we come to December and we talk about endings and transitions, we will bring all of those pieces back together and see where have we traveled.
Yeah. And you're selling yourself a bit short, Deb. So what else we're going to do? We're going to do a number of integration webinars, so that maybe after 3 months we'll have an integration webinar. And the idea behind it is that after every webinar, the material that's presented, you start integrating that into your practice. And we would expect people will have difficulties, they come up with challenges.
Yep.
Integration webinars then will be an opportunity to come back with specific questions or about clients, about integration of material.
Yeah, and you know, both about your client work and about how this is playing out in your personal lives, right? Because the polyvagal philosophy is we understand our own nervous systems and we shape our own systems toward connection, and we resolve some of our patterns of protection so that we can then bring that to our clients. So this year-long series is really a both and. It's both getting to know your own system, practicing with your own system, and exploring what this looks like with your clients. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's just a question coming in as well, Deb, about, people are just a little concerned about that they might miss out on a session. I just want to assure people that I'd say approximately 72 hours after the live session, you will get a recording of each of the webinars and of each of the integration webinars. So you'll have plenty of time to catch up, and nobody will be penalized for missing a session. Deb won't give out to anybody. Deb, you can't, this time now, you can't give out to anybody.
It's interesting because this is a big commitment. We are asking for a commitment of a year. And we also all know that life gets in the way sometimes, and so that's why the recording is there. And, you will be welcomed when you come, even if you haven't been the time before, you'll be welcomed back. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then is a question, is the training helpful also to apply polyvagal in working with children?
Yes. Yeah. I don't translate my work into kid friendly language, because I think if you're a kid therapist, you are going to do that beautifully. What I really want whenever I'm teaching is for the people who have come to learn with me to really embody the organizing principles of polyvagal, because once the principles live here, not here, but here, then you are going to be creative in the way that you bring it to the population that you work with, right? And I'm happy when we're, doing one of our Saturdays and somebody says, well, what do you think this would look like with kids? We can absolutely explore that. We can say, I don't know, let's play that out, right? Because as soon as you know which principle or which concept we're working with, then you can decide, oh, here's how that might look with a child or with a couple or with a group, right? Any of these places, because again, the nervous system is the common denominator in our human experience. And so it's just up to us to figure out, well, what language does this particular client want to listen in, right?
Yeah. Okay, Deb, I think unfortunately time is after catching up.
Yeah.
But look, we have the whole of 2021, which is the good news.
I am excited about that, and I hope that people will join us. I think it's going to be a fun year. Something I've never done before, to sort of explore in this way. So for me, it intrigued my creative energies. It's like, oh, we're going to have fun. So we are going to have fun.
Absolutely. And
we're going on an autonomic journey, an autonomic adventure, Liam. So
an autonomic adventure. That's great. And unfortunately, we didn't get to all the questions there. But if anybody has a question about anything that we talked about tonight, about the year, just please give me an email. My email address is liam, Liam, @pcpsi.ie. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And we hope that as many people join us as possible. Another thing that we're going to do, we're going to create a private Facebook group called the Year of Polyvagal, and hopefully that will support the learning as well, and that will support the growing of community.
Yeah. It really is about community. This time in our lives and building community through autonomic connection, through ventral to ventral connection, I think is the way forward. So I'm happy to be starting in another month.
Another month. So Deb, big thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to kind of wish you a really happy Christmas.
Thank you. And you as well, and everybody.
Unfortunately, I won't get to see you again before it, and I'd like to wish everybody on the call tonight a really happy Christmas, and hopefully 2021 will be better than 2020. Hopefully we'll be COVID free.
Yes, yes, yes. We hope so.
And is there anything else? No, I don't think there's anything else. If anybody again wants to get a CPD cert for tonight, Robert, you might post the link, and you might also post the link to the Éire Polyvagal, and we'll see everybody in 2020.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, be well.
Thanks, Deb. Bye.
Bye-bye.